My name is Harold Whitmore. I am 96 years old. Every day, at 6 in the morning, I do the same thing. I open my dresser drawer, take out a navy blue velvet box, and place 8 medals on the kitchen table, side by side, perfectly aligned. Then I sit, drink my coffee, and look at them in silence. 30 minutes, every day, for 73 years. My children think it's pride. My grandchildren think it's an old soldier's nostalgia, but it's none of that. It's something they would never understand. Something I took decades to understand myself. People see these medals and think they know my story. They think I'm a hero, that I sacrificed a lot for the country. And yes, I did sacrifice, but not what they think. The reason I look at these medals every day has nothing to do with what they represent. It has to do with the price I paid for each one. A price no one ever told me I'd have to pay. The answer is in 1944, in France. But for you to understand why I do this, I need to go back much earlier, to the boy I was before becoming the man who carries these medals. I was born in 1929, on a small farm in rural Iowa. We were poor, but the kind of poverty that doesn't shame you because everyone around is the same. My father grew corn and raised chickens. My mother sewed clothes for neighbors for a few pennies. We had enough to eat, a roof over our heads, and each other. I was the oldest of 4. Thomas was 2 years younger than me. Then came the twins, Mary and Elizabeth. I loved being the big brother. It made me feel important, responsible. Thomas followed me everywhere, called me my hero. I taught him how to fish in the creek behind the farm, how to fix the fence when it broke, how to whistle with 2 fingers, things my father had taught me. I had big dreams for a farm boy. I wanted to study engineering, build bridges, buildings, things that lasted forever. My mother said I had builder's hands and a dreamer's heart. She saved every penny she could, hidden in a cookie tin in the kitchen, to send me to university one day. Then the war came. Pearl Harbor was bombed when I was 12. I remember the radio crackling in the living room, President Roosevelt's voice echoing through the house, my father's face turning gray. In the years that followed, the war was all anyone talked about. In churches, at fairs, at dinners. Older boys from town started enlisting. They'd come back in uniform on visits, and everyone treated them like kings, heroes before they'd even fought. I was 16 when I decided I was going to enlist as soon as I turned 18. Not out of blind patriotism, not for glory. It was simpler than that. I wanted to prove I was brave, that I could protect the people I loved, that I was worthy of the way Thomas looked at me. My mother cried when I told her. My father squeezed my shoulder and said nothing for a long minute. Then he murmured, "You're going to do what you have to do." Thomas, 16 at the time, said he was going to enlist too as soon as he could. I said no, that one of us had to stay to take care of the twins and help Dad. He didn't like it, but he agreed. I turned 18 in April 1947. I enlisted a week later. Basic training was at Fort Benning, Georgia. 6 months of waking up before the sun, running until your legs screamed, learning to disassemble and reassemble an M1 Garand rifle with your eyes closed. I loved every second. For the first time in my life, I felt I had real purpose, direction. The other recruits became brothers faster than I imagined possible. There's something about suffering together that bonds people. Among them was a guy from Brooklyn named Vincent Romano, Vinny. He was 21, black hair always messy, and laughed at everything, even the most serious things. "If you don't laugh, you cry," he'd say. And I've already cried enough for one life. We became inseparable friends. He taught me to play poker. I taught him to shoot straight, because even after 3 months he still aimed crooked. Vinny talked about his girlfriend, Teresa, every night before sleep, showed her photo to anyone who wanted to see, and to many who didn't. "I'm gonna marry her when I get back," he'd say. Gonna have 4 kids and a dog named Soldier. I laughed and said I'd be the best man. We made plans. We all did. As if the war was going to be an adventure with a guaranteed ending. We shipped out to Europe in January 1948. England first, then France. We arrived in Normandy 2 weeks after D-Day. The beaches were still being cleared. There were still pieces, things I won't describe. But even so, I was excited. Nervous, yes, but excited. I thought it would be like in the movies. Gunfire, running, and in the end, we'd go back home with stories to tell. How naive I was, how absurdly naive. The first weeks were relatively calm. Patrols, perimeter checks, some shots in the distance, but nothing near us. Vinny joked that the war was over before we started. "We came all this way for nothing, Harold," he said. "The Germans are already retreating. In 2 months, we'll be home." I wanted to believe it. We started to feel confident, invincible even. Our platoon hadn't lost anyone. We were good, lucky, blessed. But everything changed in March 1948. Not all at once. Slowly, like poison entering the bloodstream. The first time was in a small village near Saint-Lô. I don't even remember the name. We were sent to clear the area, make sure there were no German soldiers hiding. The village was empty, open doors swinging in the wind, plates still on the tables, as if everyone had simply disappeared in the middle of dinner. We found them in the church basement. 17 civilians, women, children, 3 old men, dead for days. I won't describe how, but it was my first time seeing that. Non-military death. Death of people who didn't choose to fight. I threw up behind the church. I wasn't the only one. Our sergeant, a tough guy from Oklahoma named Davies, just said, "Bury them. We move on." And that was it. No moment of silence. No ceremony. Just, we move on. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. Especially one girl. Must have been about 7. Blonde hair in braids, holding a rag doll. Vinny noticed I was awake. "Don't think about it," he whispered in the darkness. "If you think, you'll go crazy." I tried to follow his advice. I thought I'd get over it. I thought that image would fade with time. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Worse this time. We found a convoy of refugees on the road. They had been strafed. Children, the elderly, everyone. Someone had stopped the trucks and simply opened fire. No tactical reason, no military purpose, just cruelty. There were toys on the road, a bloodied teddy bear, a wooden ball. I saw a soldier from our platoon, a kid from Minnesota named Peter, pick up the teddy bear and start to cry. Davies yelled at him, "Put that shit away and move on, soldier." Peter put the bear in his pocket. I never saw him without it again. That night, the nightmares started. Not just for me, for everyone. You could hear guys waking up screaming. Some cried, others sat in silence, staring at nothing. By day, we still functioned. We followed orders. We shot when told. We marched. But something was changing. Something was being ripped out of us, piece by piece, and no one talked about it. It was like a silent agreement. If we don't speak of it, maybe it's not real. If we don't acknowledge it, maybe we can pretend we're still who we were. April brought real combat. Our platoon was sent to take a hill occupied by Germans. It was my first time shooting at someone I could see clearly. Not a silhouette in the distance. A face. A man. He must have been my age. Blonde. Thin. When he fell, he made a sound I'll never forget. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies. It was small. Pathetic. A wet gasp. I threw up again afterwards, but this time I didn't stop shooting first. We took the hill. We lost 4 men. One of them was Peter, the kid with the teddy bear. He died calling for his mother. We buried him with the bear in his pocket. Vinny said, at least he didn't suffer. But he had suffered. You could see it in his eyes in the final seconds. Absolute terror. After that day, I started doing something strange. Every day, when I woke up, I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Up to 8. Always 8. I don't know why. It made no sense. But if I didn't count to 8, I felt something bad was going to happen. Vinny noticed. "Why do you do that?" he asked. I shrugged. "I don't know. Just need to." He didn't push it. Everyone was developing their own rituals, little manias to keep sanity. Some carried photos and kissed them before every mission. Others prayed compulsively. Davies cleaned his rifle 5 times a day, even when he hadn't fired it. May was brutal. Daily combat. Constant shelling. We lost more men. Our platoon, which had 32 at the start, now had 19. Each loss hurt less than the one before. Not because we cared less, but because there was no room left inside us for more pain. It was like a cup already overflowing. More water just runs off the side. Every day, I lost a piece of who I was. The boy from Iowa who wanted to build bridges was dying, being replaced by something harder, emptier, more capable of seeing horror and feeling nothing. And the worst part is that part of me was grateful for it, because feeling everything would be impossible to bear. Vinny was changing too, laughed less, didn't talk about Teresa anymore. When someone asked, he just muttered, "She deserves better than this." "Better than what?" I asked once. "Better than what I'm coming back as," he replied. And I understood perfectly, because I also knew I wasn't coming back as Harold, not the real Harold. In June, we received orders to advance into a forest near the German border. Intelligence said there was an enemy camp hidden there. Our mission was reconnaissance, then call in artillery if we confirmed the location. Simple, fast. Except it was never simple. It was never fast. We entered the forest at dawn. Everything was too quiet. That kind of silence that makes your stomach turn. Birds weren't singing. Wind wasn't blowing. Just our footsteps crushing leaves. That was when Vinny nudged me and pointed. Through the trees, we saw the tents. But something was wrong. There was no movement, no guards, no smoke from fires. Davies signaled us to advance with caution. When we got closer, the smell hit us. Death. Rotten. Old. The camp had been bombed days before. Bodies everywhere. Some charred, others just torn apart. And then we saw something that made everyone stop. It wasn't just soldiers. There were prisoners, civilians, chained to posts, dead along with their captors. We thought we were going to survive this war, that when it was over, we could go back home and leave it all behind. But we were wrong. Then came the day that divided my life in two, before and after. It was in July 1948, 10 kilometers inside Germany. Our division had orders to take a town called Waldheim, small, strategically important, because it had a bridge over the river. Intelligence said it was lightly defended. Few German soldiers. Minimal resistance expected. We were supposed to go in, take the bridge, hold position until reinforcements arrived. 24 hours tops. Simple. Our platoon was designated to lead. 19 men. Vinny was by my side when we crossed the tree line and saw the town. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful. Houses with red roofs. A church with a white steeple. The stone bridge crossing the calm river. "Looks like my village in Italy," Vinny murmured. "My nonna lived in a place like this." Davies split us into 3 squads. My group, with Vinny, took the bridge. We were to secure it at all costs. We advanced down the main street. Doors and windows closed. No civilians in sight. That silence again. That silence that always meant trouble. We were 50 meters from the bridge when everything exploded. Machine guns from all sides. Mortars falling like rain. We threw ourselves behind whatever cover we found. Toppled wall. Overturned cart. Metal barrel. Bullets ricocheting. Screams. Explosions. Total chaos. Davies was screaming into the radio asking for support, but the static was too much. No answer. We were alone, and there were Germans dug into every building around the bridge. More than intelligence had said. Much more. We were pinned down there for hours, unable to advance, unable to retreat, just surviving. One by one, our men fell. First Jackson, then Rodriguez, then young Tommy, who was 18 and had never kissed a girl. When night fell, we were 10. Half the platoon lost in a day. Davies had taken shrapnel in the arm, but kept commanding. "We need that bridge," he yelled. "Without it, the whole division gets stuck." Then he had an idea. A terrible idea. There was a basement in one of the buildings near the bridge. If we could get there, we could flank the main German position and clear the path. But someone would have to cross 30 meters of open street, under direct fire. Basically, suicide. "I need volunteers," Davies said. His voice was tired, defeated. He knew what he was asking. 3 men stood up, then 2 more. Vinny looked at me. I looked back. No words, just understanding. We stood up together. Davies chose 8 of us, me, Vinny, and 6 others. The plan was to run in pairs, with 10 seconds between each pair, not to give the Germans time to readjust their aim. Smoke for cover. Davies looked at each of us. "You are the best men I have ever commanded," he said. And that sounded like a goodbye. Vinny took Teresa's photo from his pocket, looked at it for a long moment, then put it back. "Let's take that bridge, Harold." "Let's," I replied, but my voice was hollow. The smoke grenade popped. First pair ran. Gunfire erupted. Both made it across, alive. Second pair, one fell, the other kept going. Third pair, mine and Vinny's. "Go!" Davies yelled. We ran. The world turned into slow motion and maximum speed at the same time. Every step was an eternity. Every second was a millisecond. I heard the shots, felt something pass close to my head. 10 meters, 15, 20. Vinny was ahead of me, running faster than me, almost at cover. Then he fell. Not dramatically. His legs just stopped working, as if they had been switched off. He collapsed face first onto the ground. I didn't think. I just went back, grabbed him by the vest, and dragged him. Shots everywhere. Dirt exploding around us. I managed to pull him behind a pile of rubble, turned him onto his back. Blood was everywhere. Chest, stomach, thigh. Too much blood. "Vinny." My voice came out broken. He looked at me, still conscious, still there. "It's not that bad," he said. Obvious lie. "You're gonna be okay," I lied back. I tried to staunch the blood. Hands shaking. Useless. Just spreading more. "Harold." His voice was getting weaker. "You have to go. The bridge." "Fuck the bridge." "No, you have to go. That's why we're here." I held his face. "You're gonna see Teresa again. Gonna have the 4 kids. And the dog. Soldier." He tried to smile. Failed. "Tell her that He coughed. Blood on his lips. "Tell her that you what, Vinny?" He didn't answer. His eyes were open, but empty. Something inside me died in that second. Sitting on the street of a German town I'd never heard of before that day, holding my best friend dead in my arms. For a bridge. For meters of stone over water. Davies was screaming for me to continue. The others had already reached the basement. They were waiting. Gently, I put Vinny on the ground, closed his eyes, took Teresa's photo from his pocket. Then I stood up and ran. We took the bridge. We killed the entrenched Germans. We held position until reinforcements arrived 12 hours later. Mission accomplished. Tactical success. The next day, Davies handed me a medal, Bronze Star, for bravery under fire, for saving the operation, for being a hero. I stood there, holding that piece of metal, and felt absolutely nothing. Complete emptiness. It was over. I was over. In the following months, I received more medals. 8 in total when the war finally ended. Each one for something I did. Something brave. Something heroic. Each one costing another piece of my soul. I functioned. I followed orders, killed when told, saved when I could, but I wasn't there anymore. The real Harold had died with Vinny on that street. The war ended in May 1949. I returned to Iowa in June. My family was waiting at the port, mother crying, father smiling proudly. Thomas hugged me tight. My hero returned. The twins, now 14, were waving little flags. I smiled, hugged them, said the right words, but I felt nothing. I came home, but I didn't come back. And that's when the 73 years began. The 50s were an attempt to pretend normality. I used the army money to start engineering college. That old dream. But I couldn't focus. I sat in classes and saw faces of dead men. Professors talked about calculus and physics, and I only heard explosions. I quit after a year. Got a job at the tractor factory near home. Simple work. Repetitive. Perfect for someone who didn't want to think. I met a woman named Dorothy. She was sweet, patient, saw something in me she thought she could save. We married in 1953, had 2 sons, Robert and Michael. I tried to be a good father, tried to be present, but there was a wall between me and the rest of the world, between me and my own family. Dorothy would ask what was wrong. The war, I'd say, as if that explained everything. Then talk about it, she begged. But I couldn't. Not the parts that mattered. Not Vinny. Not the bridge. Not the 8 times I did something that got me a medal, but cost something I could never recover. It was in the 50s that I started the ritual. The 8 medals on the table every day. Dorothy thought it was pride. You should keep them safe, she'd say. Show the boys when they grow up. But it wasn't about showing. It was about remembering. It was self-punishment, disguised as memory. In the 60s, everything fell apart. Dorothy realized I was never going to let her in, that I chose the dead over the living. You love them more than you love us, she said one night. And she was right. Not because I didn't love her and the boys, but because the dead were more real to me than the living. They were always there, always present, while my own family seemed distant, blurred, as if they were ghosts, and the dead were solid. We divorced in 1967. She took the boys. I had visitation rights, but rarely used them. Not because I didn't want to see Robert and Michael, but because looking at me hurt them. It was a constant reminder of the father I could have been if I hadn't left the best part of me on a German street. I started drinking, not dramatically, not enough to lose my job, just enough to dull the edges, to make the nightmares less vivid, to make Teresa's photo in the back of my drawer less accusing. Yes, I still had the photo. Never managed to send it to her family, never managed to throw it away. I just kept it. Like all the other things I should have let go of, but couldn't. The 70s and 80s were a gray fog. I worked. I drank. I existed. My sons grew up without me. Robert became a lawyer. Michael became a teacher. Good men. Better than me. They called me on Christmas and birthdays. Brief conversations. Polite. Empty. How are you, Dad? Fine. And you? Fine, too. Uncomfortable silence. Well, Merry Christmas. To you, too. Click. Sometimes I'd look at the phone afterwards and think about calling back, saying the real things. I'm not fine. I haven't been fine since 1948. I carry 8 medals and 23 ghosts. Your grandfather Thomas looked at me like a hero, but I'm just a broken man. But I never called, because what would that solve? It doesn't bring Vinny back. It doesn't erase choices I made. It doesn't recover years. I lost being present physically, but absent in every sense that matters. I retired in 1994, 65 years old, stopped drinking too, not out of virtue. It just didn't make a difference anymore. Sober or drunk, ghosts were equally present. In the 90s and 2000s, something changed. Not a cure, not resolution, but slow acceptance. I started to understand something. The medals weren't a reward, they were a reminder, each one marking a moment where I chose mission over person. duty over humanity. The first medal was when I left that basement of civilians to move on. Second, when I didn't break ranks to help Peter. Third, fourth, fifth, stacking up. Sixth, when I dragged Vinny, but didn't stay. Seventh, when I took the bridge. Eighth, when I came back and pretended to be whole. Each medal cost a piece of my soul, and I was compliant, because at the time it seemed necessary, seemed heroic. But now, old and alone, I see the truth. Real heroism wasn't in taking bridges. It was in trying to hold on to humanity amidst inhumanity. And I failed. Not completely, but enough. Enough so that the wrong side of me survived the war, while the right side died. I started going to therapy in 2005, 76 years old. PTSD, they called it. Trauma. Survivor's guilt. Labels that made sense, but changed nothing. The therapist asked why I looked at the medals every day. To remember, I said. Remember what? The real price. My grandchildren started visiting me in recent years. Robert's kids, 3 of them. They ask questions about the war, want stories of heroism, of glory, and I don't know what to say. How do I explain that war has no heroes, only survivors and the dead? How do I say that these medals they admire are tombstones, grave markers for pieces of me that didn't come back? Now, at 96, I finally understand why I do this. Why I put 8 medals on the table every day. It's not pride, it's not grief, it's accounting. Each medal represents a choice. 8 moments where I chose between being a soldier and being human. And 8 times I chose soldier. Vinny chose differently. He stopped. Tried to save that kid in the basement before Davies yelled. He gave his ration to a hungry civilian when he should have saved it. He kept his humanity until the end and died for it. While I, who let humanity die first, survived to carry these medals. If I could go back and talk to that 18-year-old boy shipping out to war, what would I say? I wouldn't say, don't go, because someone had to go. I wouldn't say, be a coward, because bravery was necessary. I'd say something simpler, harder. I'd say, you're going to lose pieces of yourself there. Everyone loses them. But try not to lose the pieces that really matter. Try not to let the soldier kill the human, because the medals they give you afterwards are heavy. Not because of the medal, but because of what they represent, and you will carry them forever. But he wouldn't understand, just as I wouldn't have understood if someone had told me. Some lessons we only learn by living. And some scars aren't visible but never heal. Today I understand that trauma isn't about what happened. It's about who you become afterwards, and the choices you make when no one is looking, when it's easier to move on than to stop and help, when the mission seems more important than the person in front of you. Those choices define you, and you live with them forever. I still place the 8 medals on the table every day, at 6 in the morning, 30 minutes of silence, and I always will. Not as a ritual of pride, but as a ritual of remembrance, of responsibility. Each medal is a life I didn't save, a moment of humanity I sacrificed, a piece of herald I left in European battlefields. This doesn't mean I hate myself. Not anymore. It means I accept, that I acknowledge, that I carry the weight consciously instead of pretending it doesn't exist. Dorothy was wrong. My children were wrong. I don't put medals on the table out of pride. I put them there because I need to see the real price of being called a hero every day. And remember that the true heroes were those who died keeping their humanity, not the ones who survived by losing it. If you know someone who came back from war, different, quiet, distant, carrying an invisible weight, now you know why. It's not about the battles they fought. It's about the battles inside them that never ended and never will.